we have the capacity to generate about 8,000, and what we're distributing currently is just about 5,000, and that's when you say it's high, and about 3,000, over 3,000 on a daily basis. Do you think we need a review? If there is a likelihood of review, because we have the 5 years now that has gone by, can you take us through the likelihood of a review, probably if government decides to review, because most of these discos are not operating optimally?
So, like we all agreed, we have a generation capacity almost about 9,000 megawatt, yet we are still producing or generating about 4,000 and all that. And there are a lot of challenges along the way. There are gas challenges, there are transmission challenges, there are distribution challenges, there's water management challenges. So the dams, after the rains, you have to manage the water till the next rain, and so you don't run all your machines at the same time. There are transmission distribution issues. Transmission says we want to give the distribution companies power, but the point at which they want to give it to the distribution companies, the distribution says, so we want it at this other point, and you want to give it at that point. So there's a problem, and so that's why you see the transmission company trying to come up with a facility where they want to harmonize the transmission distribution interfaces so that they can transmit power to the distribution companies. And there again, there are distribution issues where their capacities need to be upgraded, and you hear about issues of load rejection where distribution companies are not taking more power because they're also not even collecting the monies from the customers. And so you trace all of them back to some of the issues we've talked about: energy theft, poor collections, metering, and obsolete equipment, which the distribution companies would fall back and say the tariff.
Yes.
And talking about reviewing of the tariff, like I said, it's one of the cardinal points of the power sector recovery program, and which is supposed to happen to trigger the performance improvement plan of the regulator. I don't know how soon that would going to happen, given that this is an election period and there are there are backlashes when it comes, anytime you want to increase price.
Yes.
Not minding the fact that there is no commitment on predictability on the other side. And I always like to go back to using your generator. If you go and buy fuel and put in your generator, you know that I want power for the next 3 hours. So your generator is going to keep you for the next 3 hours. So there's a service level commitment when you put on your generator. Now, if you go to the discos, and then the generator, you probably cost you about 80 naira per kilowatt hour. The discos have 24 naira, and they're saying we want to increase it to, say, 60 naira and all that. The problem is that with the increase, there's no commitment on your side to tell me I'm going to have it for 8 hours between this and that. So,
despite the increase in tariff.
So a tariff increase has to have at the back of it some service level agreement that if I'm going to pay more, you're going to commit to delivering power to me either this number of hours or between this time and this time, so that I can hold you to it. And I think that's where the challenge is.
So is there a likelihood of having that review of the tariff in sight, probably post-election?
Well, I mean, if we take what the regulator has said, we can move forward. We can't really move the sector forward if that conversation is not had. Now, there's a fair question to ask whether consumers can afford it.
Yes.
But beyond that, we first need to agree that the present tariff is not cost-reflective. So what is the cost-reflective tariff? If it's 60 naira, if it's whatever it is, if we arrive at that and we can say, okay, the right price is this amount, consumers can only pay this amount, then we can now begin to look at who can pay the shortfall in the interim. I think it's chicken and egg situation where you say, does power improve before we pay more, or do we pay more before power improves? And I think there can be a pragmatic approach towards that to hedge against some of these concerns.
Right, still staying with issues around the electioneering season. Now, experts and players in your sector have posited that there's likelihood of a widespread apprehension concerning the viability of investing in the sector coming on the heels of the general elections. Do you share in this sentiment?
I think usually when there's a cycle when the elections are coming. Generally, investors are very cautious and would like to watch and see how the elections pan out. So I think power sector is not totally immune from some of those sentiments. So you would expect to see people just step back a bit and see, we're speaking just a few minutes about the likelihood of a review of the privatization and all that. And investors both locally and internationally are watching. I mean, if you made commitments 5 years ago and you want to start to tamper with it, that could go against some of the sentiments that you're talking about. But I think that I personally don't see any very major movements in the first 2 quarters of this year just because of the elections. And so we have just 2 quarters to run after the elections, and so we need to rev things up, and I hope that we're ready for it.
Just on Monday, the generation companies issued a statement that they may likely shut down. Can you speak to us on what is happening? Why do you think that they want to go with this action that they came up with?
So, so when the reform was being contemplated, the idea was to encourage generation, and so the idea of the bulk trader came in so that to guarantee investors that whatever power you bring, we will take it off you. And so that brought some comfort on the part of investors to invest in the generation capacity. Now, so some of the generation capacities that have increased their capacities and are ready to generate, but the system operator is telling them, so for example, if you have a 500 megawatt plant and you're ready to even generate 490 megawatt, but the system operator calls you and says, we only need 200 from you. Meanwhile, you have obligations, gas obligations, because if you're supposed to pay have obligation for gas, your gas is there for you whether you use it or not. So, and the system operator tells you that he only needs 200 megawatts from you because of the distribution side. And now the issue is that Gencos are complaining because they now want to be paid based on the capacity that they generate instead of the capacity that they are willing to give to the system. And so that negates the original idea of the bulk trader stepping in to buy the bulk of the power that a generation company is willing. And that can have effect down the value chain. For example, the generation companies have to pay the gas suppliers for the gas that they give them, and it's take or pay. It's either you take it or you pay for it. So when I bring gas to your gas station and you're not able to use 20% of it, you're going to pay me for the whole price. And so I think that's that note that they're kicking against the thinking that they want to be paid based on the actual generation that
because they are generating. They are generating, at least they are generating more than what is being used. So remember we say they have.
They're not generating. They have the capacity and their machines are available to generate it.
So we should also have the machines to also be able to distribute.
Take it, yes. But if there's no capacity to take, then they cannot generate. So it will just stop at capacity.
Now that brings me back to the question of a review, because you said that if after 5 years they tamper with the process that was carried out, and we have a situation where we want to say the distribution companies are not doing enough, because one would have expected probably that if they are not getting all the support that they need probably from government in terms of improving their own infrastructure, they will find ways, come together, see how they can probably get maybe money or, to provide this infrastructure, because what you would have expected to be seen is that we'll now start having, these lines, construction everywhere to ensure that the distribution is increased. And at that point, the issue of tariff will not be an issue, because Nigerians would have expected these people are actually positioning themselves. So would it not be better to, probably review, speak with these companies? If they do not have the capacity to have this infrastructure, then the government takes it and give it to those who have the capacity to.
Who are those people who have the capacity?
Well, that's where you said the investors are positioning themselves. We don't know. Definitely there will be people who are willing, they know how to get this, because other countries are doing more than what we're just talking about, between 10,000 megawatts of power being generated.
I think the issue goes back to the process of the privatization. And that's why a lot of people say, who were these companies given to? Did they pass all the tests? Did they show capacity? Did they bring their own capital, or they went to borrow from the bank? And then, so I share in these sentiments. But the issue and the fact of the matter is that in the way the power sector is structured, the only source of revenue for the entire value chain is the tariff. Is the tariff. That's the only source of revenue for the entire value chain. If tomato is selling at 40 naira, and the person who gets it from the farm it costs him 50 naira to get it, but you insist that the person sells it at 40 naira. Clearly, what's going to happen is that you're not going to see tomato on the table. And that's exactly what's happening right now. The price is not right. Any way you want to look at it, the price is not right. Are consumers willing to pay for it? That's a different thing, but the price is not right. And until we deal with that tariff issue, then the whole value chain will keep suffering for it. There are other issues, so don't think that the issues are just tariff. There are other issues in the sector, but tariff, I think, is one of the major issues which is causing the problem.
Okay, I think we're out of time now, but I just want to, in 30 seconds, I want to get your opinion on, do you think we need local and state governments to come on board in terms of keying into the off-grid solutions moving forward in 2019?
Absolutely. I think the off-grid space is open for as many people that are willing, and I think there are lots of models for it. So I want to see a lot more activity on that off-grid because it can help us bridge the huge gap.
And the power sector recovery program should come back because you said there's a dead end already.
We've not seen much recently, but I think that's the document that we have right now on the table, which has some form of consensus. So I think it's a first step to implementing it. And I think execution has always been our problem in Nigeria. The strategy has never been the issue. So I would look to see a very strict implementation of that program.